Imagine a multi-million-dollar business, right? And they're sitting on this massive warehouse that is just absolutely stuffed to the ceiling with literal pallets of cash.
Just stacks of bills gathering dust.
Exactly. Stacks of bills gathering dust. That cash isn't earning interest in a bank. It isn't being spent on research and development. It's not out there aggressively marketing your product to new audiences.
And worse, every single day it just sits in that dark room. A small percentage of it loses its value, or gets stolen. It is just waiting.
And that is the fundamental, often terrifying paradox of inventory.
It's the ultimate financial tightrope walk, really. What's fascinating here is that executives, even incredibly seasoned ones, they often fall into the trap of viewing inventory purely through an operational lens.
They just see boxes on a shelf.
Right, but financially speaking, those boxes represent a massive pile of trapped, immobilized funds.
Which brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
We are talking directly to you today, the MBA student, the future executive, the person who's going to be stepping into the boardroom and making decisions that impact the entire financial architecture of a company.
Absolutely. You don't just need to memorize a few formulas to pass an exam. You need to intimately understand the mechanics of corporate finance because, according to our source material, inventory occupies the single most strategic position in the structure of working capital.
It's not a footnote.
No. For most business enterprises, it constitutes the absolute largest component of their current assets. It is the main event.
And the text hits us with a striking insight right out of the gate. It frames inventory management as this, double-edged sword. If you hold over inventory, your cash is suffocating. You have zero liquidity.
But if you hold under inventory, your production line grinds to a catastrophic halt.
Right, and your customers walk out the door, maybe forever.
The entire goal of an executive overseeing this operation is to find what the text calls the optimum level, that absolute, perfectly balanced point where you have exactly enough stock to maximize corporate profitability without tying up a single unnecessary dollar.
So we are going to master this framework today. We're going to explore the different faces of inventory, the intense psychological and operational motives for holding it, and expose the hidden, deeply destructive costs that drain profitability from the shadows.
And then we're going to dive into the mathematical models that century-old manufacturing empires built to solve this. Finally, we'll talk about the high-level boardroom strategies used to control the chaos when you're dealing with thousands of different items.
But before we can optimize it, we have to precisely define the beast we are dealing with. Let's unpack this. The source material provides a definition that contains a brilliant little contradiction.
Oh, the usable but idle resource.
Yes. It includes the goods, materials, and supportive items an organization uses for manufacturing and sales. But those two words, usable but idle, they really capture the underlying tension.
They absolutely do. It's potential energy that hasn't been converted into kinetic energy yet.
I was trying to come up with a way to visualize this for a boardroom context. Think of inventory like keeping your life savings under your mattress.
Okay, I like that.
It has immense potential value, right? It's highly usable. You can take it out and buy a car tomorrow. But while it's just sitting there under the springs, it is completely idle.
Not earning a thing.
Exactly. It's not in an index fund yielding 8%. It's not generating dividends. It's just flat. But, you need at least some of it there just in case an emergency pops up and you need immediate, undeniable liquidity.
That is a phenomenal analogy because it highlights the opportunity cost, which we will definitely be digging into later. Every dollar tied up in that warehouse mattress is a dollar starved from your growth engine.
Right.
Now, to manage this effectively, the text breaks this idle resource down to 4 distinct categories. Understanding the financial journey of a product through these 4 stages is vital for you.
So let's track that journey. The first stage is intuitive, I think. Raw material.
Yeah, these are the basic constituents of a product.
The text uses the examples of raw cotton for cloth production or bulk plastic for toys. If you're a manufacturing company, this is where your supply chain begins.
It's the unrefined potential. But then we cross a critical accounting threshold into the second category, which is work in process, or WIP.
The messy middle.
Exactly, the messy middle. These are goods currently out on the factory floor, moving down the production line. They aren't raw cotton anymore, but they aren't a finished shirt sitting in a display case either.
Makes sense.
From a corporate finance perspective, the work in process account is fascinating because value is actively being injected into the raw material. You're pouring human labor, machine electricity, and overhead costs into this item.
So its monetary value is increasing by the hour.
It is, but it is completely illiquid. I mean, you cannot sell a half-sewn shirt.
Which means your cash is in its most vulnerable state. It's locked in transition. That is, until it reaches the third category, which is finished goods. The production process has concluded.
This is the ready-for-sale inventory waiting to be shipped to a distributor or, put on a retail shelf.
And that is typically where the public understanding of inventory stops,
Mm-hmm.
right? Raw materials go in, finished goods come out.
Right.
But there is a fourth category that is constantly overlooked, yet it holds the power to completely bankrupt an operation if mismanaged.
Spare parts.
Spare parts, the unsung heroes of the industrial park.
The text places immense emphasis on this. Spare part inventories are held primarily to cope with untimely breakdowns in machinery and facilities.
Right.
Now, by sheer volume, spare parts might seem insignificant compared to a warehouse of finished goods. But the source material makes a definitive claim here. It says they are as necessary as holding raw materials.
Because the entire value chain is dependent on the machinery. If a 50-cent pneumatic valve on your primary assembly line blows out, and you don't have a spare part sitting in a drawer somewhere.
Your multi-million-dollar operation drops to zero output.
Exactly. Your raw materials just sit there. Your labor force is standing around getting paid to do nothing. So we have these four phases, right? Raw materials, work in process, finished goods, and spare parts.
You're correct.
But this raises an important question for you to consider. If we know that inventory acts as this idle mattress cash, actively tying up our vital working capital, why not design a business that operates on absolute zero inventory?
Oh, the dream of zero inventory.
Right. Why not just buy the raw material the precise second a customer places an order?
Because we don't live in a perfectly frictionless vacuum. The reality of global commerce is incredibly messy, and the text outlines 3 critical, undeniable motives for holding inventory. 3 reasons why aiming for absolute zero is just a dangerous fantasy.
Let's explore the first one, the transaction motive.
Yeah, this is grounded in the physical and economical impossibility of perfectly matching supply and demand in real time.
Right, because in a magical world, a customer clicks buy on your website, the raw material instantly materializes on your desk, your machines assemble it in a nanosecond, and it teleports into the customer's hands.
But we have physics to deal with. The text focuses heavily on the time lag. There is always a time lag between the demand for a material and its actual supply.
So you hold inventory simply to facilitate routine daily transactions.
Exactly. It bridges that physical gap in time to ensure a smooth and uninterrupted flow of production and sales. You can't pause your factory every 20 minutes to wait for a delivery truck to bring the next batch of plastic.
So the transaction motive handles the boring, predictable, everyday routine. But business is rarely just routine, which leads to motive 2, the precaution motive. And this is entirely about risk mitigation.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, modern supply chains are incredibly fragile.
Oh, absolutely.
The text points out that companies hold inventories to safeguard against the risk of unpredictable changes in demand and supply forces. You're building a shock absorber.
Right.
The source specifically lists external risks: labor strikes, transport disruptions, short supply in the broader market, and the notoriously lengthy bureaucratic processes involved in importing goods across international borders.
We've all seen real-world examples of this recently, like if a massive cargo ship gets stuck in a major global canal, or a port strike halts all shipping containers on the West Coast, and your raw material is trapped in the water for a month.
Your precaution inventory is the only oxygen your company has left.
It's a pure insurance policy against global chaos.
It is. But then we arrive at the third motive, which often causes a lot of friction in executive strategy meetings.
Wow.
Motive 3, the speculative motive.
Okay.
The text notes that inventories might be held so that an enterprise can take advantage of price fluctuations.
Wait, I have to push back on this. Shouldn't an enterprise be laser-focused on its core competency? I mean, if I'm the CEO of a furniture manufacturing company, my job is to build and sell the best chairs in the world.
Right.
It isn't to play the global commodities market like a Wall Street day trader. Isn't speculation an incredibly dangerous mandate for an operations manager?
It's a very fair challenge, and it's a common trap for business students to conflate the two. But operational speculation is not Wall Street speculation.
Okay, explain that.
The manager isn't day trading on an app. They are exercising strategic operational foresight. The text explains it like this. If you, as the furniture CEO, expect the price of industrial lumber to go up steeply in the near future,
Like due to a known shortage or incoming tariffs.
precisely, you might decide to hold a significantly larger than necessary stock of lumber right now.
Ah, I see the distinction. So if I know lumber is going to jump 30% next quarter, I buy a year's worth of lumber today at the current lower price.
Exactly. You secure a massive tangible price advantage. You aren't buying that lumber with the intent to flip it to another manufacturer for a quick profit.
Right.
You're buying it to lock in your own internal cost of goods sold. You're protecting your future profit margins against inflation. That is the speculative motive working in service of corporate finance.
Okay, that makes total strategic sense. So we are heavily motivated by reality to hold inventory. We absolutely need it for smooth daily transactions. We need it as a precaution against global supply chain shocks. And we strategically use it to speculate and lock in favorable pricing.
But this convenience, this insurance, this price locking, it comes at a breathtakingly steep price.
The text issues a massive warning here. To maximize profitability, the golden rule is that we must ruthlessly minimize overall costs. And the expenses associated with inventory form this vicious triangle where the corners are constantly at war with each other.
Let's break down this cost triangle. The first corner is the holding cost, which the text also refers to as the carrying cost.
These are the incredibly brutal, often deeply hidden expenses of actually keeping that mattress stuffed full of cash. Some of them are obvious, right? You have to pay rent for the storage space.
Yep.
You have to pay material handlers to move it around. You have to pay insurance premiums on the warehouse. And you pay local property taxes on the value of the goods.
But the darker costs are the ones that erode profitability silently. Obsolescence is a massive one.
Oh, totally. If you're a tech company and you manufacture 100,000 smartphones, but they sit in a warehouse for a year while a competitor releases a better model, your inventory hasn't physically degraded, but financially it's rotting. It is obsolete.
Exactly. Add theft and natural degradation to that list as well. But perhaps the most important holding cost for an MBA student to conceptualize is the one we touched on earlier, the opportunity costs.
The invisible killer.
It is the interest on the funds tied up in financing the goods.
Right.
If your company uses $1 million of its working capital to manufacture finished goods that just sit in a dark room, you are actively losing the 5 to 8% return you could have generated if that $1 million was deployed into a high-yield bond or used to acquire a competitor.
The money is just sterile.
Completely sterile.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting from an accounting perspective. How does a manager actually calculate all this? Do they walk around the warehouse trying to figure out exactly how much electricity one pallet of boxes uses and then add the exact statistical probability of theft for that specific item?
No. The text notes that deriving a specific per-unit monetary cost for things as nebulous as obsolescence or theft probability is a fool's errand. It's too complex.
Makes sense.
So holding costs are commonly assessed as a flat percentage of unit value.
So instead of a massive spreadsheet trying to track the electricity used by a single desk chair, the accounting department just declares, our annual holding cost is 20% of the item's purchase price. If a chair costs us $100 to make, it costs us $20 a year just to let it sit there.
It streamlines the math beautifully, and it leads to a very simple, undeniable golden rule for holding costs. As inventory levels rise, holding charges scale up right alongside them.
Okay.
Therefore, if your only goal is to minimize carrying costs, your strategy should be to make frequent orders of very, very small quantities.
Okay, but if I try to game the system by making 10,000 tiny orders so my warehouse is always nearly empty and my holding costs drop to zero, I run straight into a brick wall. And that wall is the second corner of our triangle, ordering costs.
The mathematical arch nemesis of the holding cost. Ordering costs, which are sometimes called purchase or setup costs, are the fees associated with the actual friction of placing an order.
The text lists these out vividly. You have to pay the salaries of the purchasing department personnel. You have communication expenses, the administrative burden of handling the paperwork.
The physical transport and shipping costs to move the goods to your facility.
And what the text wonderfully calls the intermittent cost of chasing orders.
I love that phrase. It perfectly captures the friction. And notice the underlying nature of these costs. They are largely fixed per order. It takes the exact same amount of administrative paperwork, the same phone calls, and often a very similar flat freight fee to order 10 units as it does to order 10,000 units.
I think the best way to conceptualize this clash is to think about how we buy food. Let's say you are terrified of holding costs, right? You don't want fresh produce rotting in your refrigerator, which is obsolescence.
Okay.
So you decide your strategy is to order delivery from a local restaurant for every single meal exactly when you are hungry.
Well, your holding cost is essentially zero. Nothing ever rots.
But the ordering cost will absolutely bankrupt you.
Huh.
You're paying a $5 delivery fee, a service charge, and a tip 3 times a day. The administrative friction of the order eats all your capital.
Oh, absolutely.
So you try to swing the pendulum the other way. You want to minimize your ordering costs, so you drive to a massive wholesale grocery store once every 2 months, and you buy an entire truckload of food.
You've paid the ordering cost of the gas and your time only once.
But by week 4, half the fresh produce is covered in mold in the back of your fridge. You minimized ordering costs, but your holding costs exploded through massive obsolescence.
It is a flawless analogy. To lower holding costs, you place frequent small orders. To lower ordering costs, you place a rare number of massive orders. They are in direct, structurally opposed mathematical conflict.
And we haven't even touched the third corner of the triangle yet. Cost 3, stockout costs.
This is the shadow cost. The text notes that this is absolutely the most difficult metric to compute accurately, but it is arguably the most lethal. A stockout cost is incurred the moment a customer demands an item, and it is simply not available.
Let's integrate some critical boardroom vocabulary here that the text provides. When a stockout happens, you generally face 2 distinct outcomes. The best-case scenario is what the text calls a backorder.
Right. A backorder occurs when demand cannot be met immediately from your current stock, but the customer is willing to wait. They allow you to fulfill the order later.
So it's a delay in revenue?
Yes. And it might cost you some goodwill or require a discount, but the sale isn't entirely dead.
But the worst-case scenario is what the text defines as lost sales. The demand cannot be met, the customer refuses to wait, and they withdraw their demand completely.
They go directly to your competitor.
Exactly. A lost sale isn't just a delay, it is the permanent destruction of that revenue, and potentially the destruction of the entire lifetime value of that customer if they prefer the competitor's service.
And beyond lost sales, stockout costs include the apocalyptic scenario we mentioned earlier, the internal stockout. If a vital component doesn't arrive on the factory floor, the entire production line stops. The cost of a factory sitting idle for 24 hours is astronomical.
And the text issues a profound psychological warning to managers regarding this third cost.
Yeah.
It states that failing to accurately understand the true magnitude of stockout expenses can trigger a sort of executive panic.
They get completely paralyzed.
Yes, they become so paralyzed by the fear of a stockout, so terrified of stopping the production line, that they artificially inflate their holding costs by maintaining significantly higher inventory levels than customer requirements actually justify.
They let the fear of corner 3 trick them into blowing up corner 1.
So if ordering too much bankrupts us in holding costs, and ordering too little bankrupts us in delivery fees, and running out completely destroys our customer base, how does an executive actually find the middle ground without just blindly guessing?
They don't guess. They rely on a mathematical baseline developed over a century ago. They rely on the economic order quantity.
The legendary EOQ. This is the math of management.
The EOQ is a brilliant accounting formula designed to find the exact point at which the combination of order costs and inventory carrying costs are at their absolute mathematical minimum. It calculates the perfect compromise.
Before we look at the formula, I want you to visualize figure 15.1 from the source material. It's crucial to see the geometry of this before we do the math.
Let's paint the picture.
Picture a simple graph. Along the bottom horizontal axis, we have order quantity. Small orders are on the far left, massive orders are on the far right. Now, on the vertical axis going up, we have annual cost in dollars.
Okay, let's chart the 2 competing forces. First, draw the ordering cost curve. If you make lots of tiny orders on the left side of the graph, your annual ordering cost is sky high. But as you move to the right and make larger, less frequent orders, that line swoops down dramatically.
Now, draw the holding cost line. If you make tiny orders on the left, your holding cost is practically 0. But as you move to the right and order massive quantities, the holding cost line shoots straight up at a steep diagonal. The more you buy, the more it costs to store.
So you have a swooping line going down and a straight line going up. If you mathematically add those 2 lines together at every point on the graph, you create a third overarching line, the total cost curve. And it looks like a large U-shaped smile.
And the absolute lowest point of that smile, the nadir of total cost, occurs exactly at the point where the descending ordering cost line intersects with the ascending holding cost line.
Right.
Drop a line straight down from that X to the bottom axis, and that precise number is your economic order quantity.
It is incredibly elegant. But to achieve that elegance, we have to acknowledge the history and the constraints of the math. This model is formally known as the Wilson EOQ model, developed all the way back in 1913, right around the time Henry Ford was pioneering the modern assembly line.
That's fascinating context.
And to make the math function perfectly, the text lists several rigid assumptions that are baked into the formula.
Okay, let's hear the constraints.
First, the model assumes that demand is known and completely constant throughout the year.
Right.
Second, it assumes lead time. The time it takes for a supplier to deliver an order is known and perfectly constant. Third, it assumes you are only calculating this for one single item in a vacuum.
Just one item.
Yep. Fourth, it assumes stock is replenished instantaneously the moment you need it. Fifth, the price per unit never changes. And finally, it assumes stockouts absolutely do not occur.
All right, I have to step in here and challenge this.
Go for it.
In what universe is consumer demand perfectly flat 365 days a year? When does a massive freight order ever arrive exactly on the hour, instantaneously, with zero weather delays or traffic? This sounds like a beautiful, sterile math puzzle built by a 1913 academic that is completely useless for a modern manager dealing with chaotic, real-world supply chains.
It's the most common critique of the EOQ, but if we connect this to the bigger picture of corporate financial modeling, you'll see why it's still taught.
Okay, why?
All foundational financial models require constants to establish a baseline. You have to isolate the variables in a vacuum first. If you don't know what the absolute mathematical ideal looks like under perfect conditions, you have no anchor.
That makes sense.
You use the EOQ to establish your North Star, and then and only then do you apply executive judgment to adjust those variables for the chaos of the real world.
That is a critical perspective. You can't deviate from the plan if you don't have a plan in the first place. So how do we actually extract this North Star number? The text offers two approaches.
The first is the brute force method, the trial and error approach. This is purely analytical. A manager simply plots out a bunch of different potential lot sizes, runs the total inventory cost calculation for every single one, and manually looks for the lowest number.
Total inventory cost being your total annual purchase price, plus your total annual ordering cost, plus your total annual holding cost. It's effective, but if you're managing hundreds of items, it's agonizingly slow.
Which is why we rely on the second approach, the mathematical approach, the Wilson formula.
Let's do a deep dive into the mechanics of this formula. We are going to walk through example 15.1 from the text. I want you, the listener, to understand exactly why the variables are positioned where they are, rather than just memorizing a string of letters.
Let's set the parameters. We are looking at an auto parts supplier. They purchase and sell Hardy brand car batteries.
The setup gives us four vital pieces of data. First, annual demand, represented by the letter D. The supplier knows they sell exactly 1,200 batteries over the course of the year. Second, the price per unit, P. They buy these batteries from the manufacturer for 28 rupees each. Third, the ordering cost, CO. Every time they pick up the phone and place an order, it costs exactly 20 rupees in administrative time, paperwork, and flat shipping fees.
And fourth, the holding cost says. The text states that the annual cost to store a battery is estimated at 30% of the battery's value.
Let's pause on that holding cost for a second. We discussed earlier that this is typically a percentage, but the formula requires a hard currency number, so we take 30% of the 28 rupee purchase price.
Right, 28 multiplied by 0.30 equals 8.4. So it costs us 8.4 rupees every year just to let one battery sit on the shelf.
So our inputs are locked, demand is 1,200, order cost is 20, holding cost is 8.4.
Now for the formula. The EOQ equals the square root of a single fraction.
Let's build that fraction conceptually. The numerator, the top part of the fraction, is 2 times demand times ordering costs.
And why are demand and ordering costs on the top?
Because as demand increases, or as the fee to place an order increases, the mathematical pressure pushes you to order more units at once. They drive the order quantity up.
Exactly. And the denominator, the bottom of the fraction, is the holding cost. It sits on the bottom because holding cost acts as gravitational pull. As the cost to store an item gets heavier and more expensive, it pulls your ideal order size down.
So the formula is the square root of 2 times demand times order cost divided by holding cost. Let's run the numbers.
Let's do it.
Top half. 2 times the demand of 1,200 is 2,400. Multiply that by the order cost of 20, and you get 48,000.
Now we divide that top number, 48,000, by the gravitational pull of our holding cost, which is 8.4. 48,000 divided by 8.4 gives us roughly 5714.
And the final step, we take the square root of 5714. The square root is exactly 75.6. There is our North Star. Our economic order quantity is 75.6 batteries.
What does that actually dictate in the real world? It means the warehouse manager now has an ironclad directive. When they call the manufacturer, they do not order 10 batteries because the ordering fees will bleed them dry.
Right.
They do not order 500 batteries because the holding costs will suffocate their working capital. They order exactly 76 batteries. That is the point of maximum financial efficiency.
And we can immediately extrapolate strategic data from this. If we know our annual demand is 1,200 batteries, and we know we are going to order 75.6 batteries every time we call, how many times will we call?
1,200 divided by 75.6 equals 15.8 orders per year.
Which allows us to calculate another critical piece of vocabulary from the text, the TBO, or time between orders. If we are placing 15.8 orders over a 365-day year, our TBO is roughly 23 days.
We place an order every 3 weeks.
Now, I want to prove the magic of this formula. Let's look at the costs. If we place 15.8 orders a year, and each order has a flat administrative fee of 20 rupees, our total ordering cost for the entire year is 317.5 rupees.
And what about the holding cost? On average, we hold half of our order size in inventory at any given time as we sell through it. Half of 75.6 is 37.8 batteries sitting in the warehouse on average.
Okay, multiply those 37.8 batteries by our holding cost of 8.4 rupees, and you get exactly 317.5 rupees.
Total ordering cost is 317.5. Total holding cost is 317.5. They are perfectly symmetrically equal. As we visualized on the graph earlier, the EOQ found the exact intersection.
And if you add the actual purchase price of the 1,200 batteries, which is 33,600 rupees, your absolute minimum total inventory cost for the year is 34,235 rupees. You have mathematically disarmed the paradox of the mattress cash.
It is incredibly satisfying when the accounting aligns perfectly like that. However, the EOQ only solves half of the manager's problem.
Right. It brilliantly answers the question of how much to order, but it tells you absolutely nothing about when to pick up the phone.
Exactly. If you wait until you have 0 batteries on the shelf to place your EOQ order of 76 batteries, you are going to experience a massive stock out while you wait for the delivery truck to arrive.
You need a trigger. Which brings us to the reorder level. The text defines this as the exact level of stock at which a purchase requisition is initiated.
To calculate this trigger effectively, the text states that an executive needs to pull 3 specific data points from their operational subsystem.
Let's break them down. First, usage rate. This is your daily burn rate. How fast are you consuming inventory? You find this by simply taking your annual demand and dividing it by the days in your business year.
Second, lead time. This is the physical gap in time between placing the order and the truck actually backing up to your loading dock. The text notes you rely heavily on the purchasing department's historical records to calculate an accurate average lead time.
And third, safety stock. This is the precaution motive materialized. It's the emergency buffer, the absolute minimum level of inventory you refuse to dip below, usually expressed as several days' worth of typical consumption.
So the formula for the reorder level is brilliantly logical. You multiply your lead time by your daily usage rate. Then you add your safety stock.
The easiest way to visualize this is the fuel gauge in your car. Imagine you're driving on a desolate highway. You know your car burns exactly 1 gallon of gas every 30 miles. That's your usage rate. You see a sign that says the next gas station is 60 miles away. That's your lead time. You obviously don't wait until your tank is at absolute 0 to start panicking. Your reorder level triggers in your brain when you hit exactly 2 gallons left, because that covers the 60-mile lead time.
And ideally, you want an extra half gallon in the tank just in case there's traffic.
Exactly. That's your safety stock.
That analogy translates perfectly to corporate material planning. Let's look at example 12.2 from the text to lock this in with real numbers. We are analyzing Bharat Limited, a large-scale manufacturer of furniture.
We need to calculate their precise reorder level for a core raw material. Let's assume it's industrial wood. The setup gives us these constraints. Annual consumption of wood is 12,000 units. The text specifies they use a 360-day operating year to keep the math clean.
Okay.
Their historical lead time from their timber supplier is 15 days. And management has mandated a safety stock equal to 30 days of standard consumption.
Step 1. Calculate the daily usage rate. If they consume 12,000 units over a 360-day year, they are burning through exactly 33.3 units of wood every single day.
Step 2. Quantify the safety stock. Management wants a 30-day buffer. 30 days multiplied by 33.3 units a day equals 1,000 units. They want 1,000 units untouched at all times.
Step 3. Plug it into the formula. Lead time multiplied by usage rate plus safety stock.
So lead time is 15 days. Multiply that by 33.3 units a day. That means during the 2 weeks they are waiting for the truck, they will consume exactly 500 units.
Add those 500 units to the safety stock of 1,000 units. 500 plus 1,000 equals 1,500 units.
So 1,500 units is the reorder level. Let me put this in the perspective of the warehouse floor manager. You're watching the towering pile of wood decrease day by day. 3,000 units, 2,500 units, 2,000 units. The very second that pile hits 1,500 units, the system flashes red. You instantly generate a purchase order for your calculated EOQ amount.
And let's map out exactly what happens after you make that call. Over the next 15 days, the lead time, while you impatiently wait for the timber supplier, your factory will consume exactly 500 units of wood.
So on the morning of the 15th day, when the delivery truck finally pulls into the lot, you have exactly 1,000 units left in the warehouse.
Which is your designated safety stock. You timed the arrival flawlessly. The 500 units covered your operations while the truck was in transit, and the 1,000 unit safety stock sat there, completely untouched, acting purely as an insurance policy, just in case the truck had blown a tire or the timber mill had suffered a power outage.
It is a beautifully orchestrated symphony. You have your economic order quantity dictating exactly how much to buy to minimize your financial bleed, and your reorder level dictating exactly when to buy to ensure your production line never, ever stops.
It was a symphony, but there is a massive operational catch.
There is always a catch when theory meets reality.
This level of intense mathematical precision is absolutely wonderful when you are dealing with a single item, like car batteries or timber for furniture. But what happens when you graduate to managing a sprawling corporate operation?
Oh boy.
A massive retail conglomerate or an international hospital system managing 50,000 different individual SKUs. You simply cannot mathematically monitor, calculate, and adjust EOQ and daily reorder formulas for 50,000 distinct items with equal intensity.
The administrative cost, the ordering cost corner of our triangle would require an absolute army of accountants and would destroy your profitability.
Which introduces the final major phase of our strategic discussion, categorizing the chaos. How do you triage a massive inventory system so you don't drown in data?
The text provides 3 major high-level control systems used by modern executives: ABC analysis, VED analysis, and JIT. Let's start with ABC analysis, which stands for Always Better Control.
The core philosophy here is value-based grading. It's essentially the Pareto principle applied to working capital. The text explains that this system categorizes items strictly according to their annual consumption value. It is designed to identify the incredibly small handful of items that account for the massive majority of the company's monetary spend.
It separates the inventory into 3 specific tiers. Let's look at Category A. This represents the high-value materials. The text states that these items typically account for a staggering 70 to 80% of the total annual consumption value.
And this is the key, they only represent 10 to 20% of the actual physical items in the warehouse.
So a tiny fraction of your stock is eating 80% of your cash. Because these items are so capital intensive, the strategic response is strict control. For Category A items, you calculate precise EOQs, you monitor them daily, and you maintain incredibly low safety stocks, because tying up cash in extra A items is prohibitively expensive.
Then you move down to Category B, the medium value materials. These are the middle class of your inventory. They represent roughly 15 to 25% of the financial value and about 30% of the physical volume.
The strategy here is moderate control. You rely on standard operating procedures, periodic reviews, and moderate safety stocks.
The Category C is where it gets really interesting, the low value materials. These items account for a minuscule 5% of your total financial spend, but they represent 50% of the total physical items you manage.
Literally half of the distinct objects in your warehouse are practically worthless from a financial perspective.
And because of that, The strategy for C items, according to the source material, is to take a lenient view. You implement much looser control, and counterintuitively, you keep a very high safety stock.
Let me use an analogy to explain why you keep high safety stocks of cheap items. Imagine you are managing a high-end luxury jewelry store. Your Category A items are the diamond engagement rings. They represent 80% of your working capital.
Right.
You lock them in a titanium safe, you count them individually every single morning and night, and you only keep a very limited selection on hand. Strict control, low safety stock.
Because holding 10 extra diamond rings would destroy your liquidity, right?
Exactly. Now look at your Category C items. These are the little microfiber polishing cloths you use to wipe fingerprints off glass display cases. They cost 4 cents each, but you have hundreds of them laying around. Do you hire an accountant to calculate a Wilson EOQ formula for the polishing cloths?
Of course not.
Do you count them every night? Do you strictly monitor their usage? No. You just buy a massive oversized box of 5,000 of them, a huge safety stock, shove them in a back closet, and you don't even blink if an employee accidentally takes one home.
The administrative cost of tightly managing them is vastly higher than the financial value of the items themselves. That is a brilliant illustration.
That makes sense.
ABC analysis ensures you allocate your finite management energy exactly where it will have the maximum financial leverage. You don't spend $50 of an accountant's time to save 4 cents on a cloth. But the text immediately introduces a vital caveat here.
Oh, what happens?
What happens if one of those Category C items is suddenly the most important thing in the building?
What do you mean?
What if that 4-cent item isn't a polishing cloth? What if it's a specific custom-threaded screw that holds the main drive belt of your primary manufacturing engine together?
Oh, what?
It has almost zero financial value, so it's firmly Category C. But if it breaks, and you don't have one, your multi-million-dollar production line dies. Its operational importance is infinite.
That is a terrifying blind spot in ABC analysis.
Yeah.
And that is exactly why the text introduces the second system, VED analysis, the criticality test.
VED is a framework used specifically for spare parts and components. It completely ignores financial value. Instead, it classifies items strictly by the catastrophic consequence of a stockout.
VED. Let's break the acronym down. V stands for vital. These are items where, without them, production comes to a complete immediate halt. The engine dies.
Right.
E stands for essential. A stockout here doesn't stop the entire factory immediately, but it severely degrades performance and the cost of the disruption is very high.
And D stands for desirable. A shortage of a desirable item causes only a minor localized disruption for a short duration, and the financial impact is nominal.
And here is the expert insight from the text that elevates this from a textbook theory to a true boardroom strategy. You don't use ABC or VED in isolation. The text advises combining them into a powerful cross matrix.
This is how you achieve true operational mastery. You overlay the two systems. You might identify an item that is incredibly cheap to buy a Category C item. But according to your engineers, it is absolutely vital to the machinery, a Category V item.
So it becomes a CV item. Low financial value, massive operational criticality.
So your strategy writes itself. Because it's cheap to hold, Category C, you can afford to buy a massive safety stock without hurting your working capital.
Right.
And because it's vital, Category V, you must hold a massive safety stock because the risk of a stockout is apocalyptic. You buy 10,000 of those 5-cent engine screws and you never worry about them again.
It allows for highly nuanced, multi-dimensional decision-making. Now, we need to weave in another piece of text vocabulary here. Consumables.
Consumables fit perfectly into this matrix, usually in the C and D categories. The PEX defines consumables as materials needed to support daily operations, but which never physically become part of the final product you sell.
We're talking about the lubricating oil for the machines, the printer paper for the logistics office, the industrial cleaning supplies for the factory floor.
Exactly. They are necessary to keep the lights on, but they aren't the raw materials of your core product. You manage them leniently, ensure high safety stocks so you never run out of printer paper during a massive shipping day, and focus your intense analytical energy elsewhere.
Speaking of intense analytical energy, that brings us to the final and arguably most culturally famous inventory control system discussed in the text, just-in-time, or JIT.
JIT is the holy grail of lean manufacturing. The text defines just-in-time as a comprehensive inventory management strategy aimed at absolutely minimizing costs by ordering replacement goods to arrive shortly before they are actually needed in the production process.
It is an aggressive attempt to virtually eliminate the holding cost corner of our triangle. Under pure JIT, you do not have a mattress full of cash. You don't have a massive warehouse acting as a shock absorber. You rely on the cash being handed to you the exact millisecond you need to pay a bill.
It requires a supply chain of breathtaking efficiency and precision. JIT operates on the broader philosophy of a lean strategy.
Which the text defines as a business strategy that ruthlessly aims at doing every operation using the least possible resource, whether that resource is people, physical space, stored stock, equipment, or time. It is the systematic elimination of all operational fat.
But to execute a lean strategy and JIT, you can't just blindly hope the delivery truck shows up. It relies on instantaneous, flawless communication. The text notes a fascinating historical evolution here. It discusses how JIT used to be managed with physical visual triggers.
Yes, the old Cardex systems, physical flip card inventory bins. When a worker emptied a bin of parts, a brightly colored card was revealed at the bottom, which signaled a runner to physically go get more parts.
It's so manual. But today, JIT relies on highly integrated modern purchasing software and what the text refers to as a Kanban system.
Kanban is the digital heartbeat of JIT. The text defines it as a trigger. It can be a physical card or, more likely today, an automated electronic message that passes backward through the entire supply chain.
Right.
It's an immediate signal that says, I just consumed 1 unit of this part on the assembly line. Instantly trigger the supplier to put 1 replacement unit on a truck right now.
It creates a pull system rather than a push system.
Yeah.
You only make something when the next station down the line explicitly asks for it via Kanban.
And while JIT is famous in manufacturing, the text touches on concepts that overlap heavily with retail and hospitality. Think about stock rotation.
Oh, right. The text notes this is critical where perishable goods are involved. Stock rotation is the physical management practice of changing the way inventory is displayed to ensure older stock is sold before it spoils. First in, first out.
It's why the freshest milk is always pushed to the very back of the dairy cooler at the grocery store. They are forcing the customer to take the older inventory first to combat obsolescence holding costs. In a way, managing highly perishable food is the ultimate forced JIT system. You can't hoard it or it becomes worthless.
Which brings us back to the financial reality. If you master JIT, if you categorize your chaos with ABC and VED, if you calculate your EOQ and reorder points perfectly, you unlock a superpower. The text briefly mentions inventory credit.
Using your perfectly managed stock as collateral to raise external finance. You go to a bank and say, I have a highly optimized, high-turnover warehouse with $1 million of finished goods. I need a $500,000 line of credit.
Because your inventory management is so mathematically sound, the bank views that inventory as liquid cash, not as a risky liability.
It transforms your idle mattress cash into leveraged growth capital. So let's take a deep breath and zoom out. We have covered an immense amount of strategic ground today. We started by defining inventory as that paradoxical, usable, but idle resource. We dissected the transaction, precaution, and speculative motives for holding it.
We engaged in the brutal war of the cost triangle, balancing the invisible drain of holding and opportunity costs against the friction of ordering costs.
We established our mathematical North Star using the 1913 Wilson EOQ formula and timed our supply chains with the reorder level and safety stocks.
And finally, we learned how to scale that math to thousands of items using ABC value categorization, VED criticality matrices, and the lean, Kanban-driven precision of just-in-time strategy.
For you, the MBA student listening, understanding this isn't just about passing a corporate finance module. This is about boardroom survival. Mastering this exact trade-off, finding the razor-thin fulcrum point between suffocating holding costs and catastrophic stock-out risks is the single quickest, most dramatic way you can impact a company's bottom line.
It really is.
Freeing up trapped working capital allows a business to innovate, to acquire, and to utterly dominate competitors who are sluggishly sitting on bloated, poorly managed warehouses.
It is the unseen engine of all corporate strategy. But before we sign off, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought, something to deeply mull over as you transition from learning these textbook theories to actually applying them in the real world.
Let's hear it.
Looking very closely at the source material we covered today, there is a massive inherent contradiction. Early in the text, it insists that the precaution motive is absolutely vital. It says you must hold safety stock to safeguard your business against unpredictable strikes, transport disruptions, and global chaos. It demands a buffer.
It calls it an insurance policy.
Yes, yet later in the exact same text, it praises just-in-time inventory as the ultimate lean strategy. It glorifies the virtual elimination of holding costs and the stripping away of safety stocks in the pursuit of absolute efficiency.
Those two philosophies cannot exist in the same space. You either have a buffer or you are perfectly lean.
Exactly. So as future executives, you have to ask yourself a very hard, potentially company-ending question. In our modern, relentless pursuit of mathematical perfection and our obsession with the EOQ and JIT lean strategy to boost quarterly profits, have we systematically sacrificed the very precaution that protects us from catastrophic failure?
Wow.
When the real world inevitably disrupts the global supply chain with a pandemic, a war, or a paralyzed canal, have we made our supply chains so perfectly mathematically lean that they are fundamentally too fragile to survive the shock?
That is the multi-million-dollar boardroom question. Are we so mathematically perfect that we are functionally fragile? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden high-stakes world of corporate finance and working capital. I guarantee you we're going to look at every warehouse, every stockroom, and every delivery truck on the highway entirely differently from now on. Until next time, keep digging into the details.